Hello, District 25 Toastmasters. Part of being an effective trainer is fostering an environment where adult learners can flourish. District 25 TLI co-chairs Brandi, Wesley, and Kelsey Dean, along with Program Quality Director Jesse Ford, present the 2023 to 2024 Winter TLI Season Speaker to Trainer Workshop. The objective of this workshop is to assist fellow D25 Toastmasters in learning and developing skills in order to facilitate officer training sessions.
All right. Good morning, District 25 and other districts that have chosen to join us this morning. We are excited you are all here. This morning, we have the great TLI chairs in District 25, Brandi and Kelsey, here to put on a very special session, Speaker to Trainer. Now, I will say, before we get going, we've done some adjustments this morning. Unfortunately, Kelsey has a little bit under the weather and she has lost part of her voice. So there may be some times that we're going to actually do what we are modeling and show and invite you to be part of this conversation. So be prepared, have your camera on if you're able to, because we want to get you involved with us and make this a better presentation for everybody. All right. Now, let me introduce you to the actual team, though, so that you can actually see them on the screen. Can we go to the next slide, please? There they are. See, look at that. Well, my name is Jesse Ford. I am your Program Quality Director in District 25. But this team, specifically today, we've got Kelsey Dean and Brandi Wesley. They are the TLI co-chairs this year. And let me give you a chance. Let's give them a round of applause for how well they've done with TLI so far. Oh, man, I tell you what, these two ladies are amazing with a capital A. Now, let's go and get to our next slide, because just like any good people in Toastmasters, we are going to have an actual agenda that I just dropped in chat for you all. So you can see what we're going to be doing. There'll be a couple times for breaks, training, and then we will do some wrap up. Yep, that's right. We're being vague on purpose because we want you to follow along and engage. So if anybody has any questions, we'll get to those in a few. Don't worry. Next slide, please. All right. I believe it's over to Brandi to kick us off.
Yes, thank you so much, Jesse, and thank you everyone for being here today. Today we're going to be discussing the 5 major steps in preparing and presenting an effective officer training session. So if you follow each step, your training session is certain to be a success. And at the end of today's presentation, you'll be able to do what you see here on the slide. Use a gap analysis to determine your audience's needs. Adapt your content to the needs of the training audience, choose the right training method, manage difficult behavior, and evaluate your officer training session. So we're going to get started with identifying the differences between a speaker and a trainer. There is a difference. So the purpose of the speaker is to inform, persuade, or entertain. It's a one-way communication. The speaker speaks and the audience listens. With a trainer, though, we use two-way communication to ensure that everyone is involved in the learning process. A trainer provides information for the audience to apply after attending the training to motivate the audience to actively participate in the program. Now, to create a learning environment, the trainer spends only 30% of the time lecturing, and the remainder of that time is used in applying the material and interacting with the participants, which you'll see us doing today. So the process of training differs from speaking as well. And instead of talking to the audience, a trainer talks with the audience, asking them what they know. A trainer will also compare that to what they need to know and fill in the missing information. A speaker uses humor and anecdotes as the primary tools for an effective presentation. And a trainer uses these tools as well. We're a little crazy and we'll get a little humor sprinkled in here and there. But we also incorporate lectures, role plays, exercises, case studies, and demonstrations. And since these tools are essential to the trainers, we're going to discuss them in detail a little bit later. Now, one final difference between a speaker and a trainer lies in feedback. on the presentation. A speaker receives immediate feedback through applause, or if you've ever been to a Toastmasters meeting, you might get one from an evaluator. And a trainer receives feedback through written evaluations from the audience and through observation. They can read facial cues or those nonverbal cues. And then that trainer also observes participants to see if they're applying what they've learned. So now that we have a little bit of a better understanding between the difference of giving a speech and conducting a training program, we're ready to focus on the steps in leading an effective TLI officer training session. All right, so throughout the remainder of this presentation, we're going to focus on each of the 5 steps you see here on the screen. We're going to start with gap analysis. Who can tell me what gap analysis is? You can raise your hand or you can interact in the chat. Any hands? Yes, Miss Donna Young.
It's figuring out what they know and what they don't know. So you're not teaching them stuff they already know.
Absolutely, yes. That current skill level versus the required skill level. Now, much of what we're going to be talking about today, we are intending for the TLI officer training sessions that will be starting on Monday and going throughout January. But this can apply to any training session outside of Toastmasters as well. So you want to look at what they currently know, what their current skills are, and for the TLI officer training session, what they need to know for that role. Determining the gap between the current skill level and the required skill level is what we're going to refer to as gap analysis. And this can be done with a survey or just personal observations, an interview, or a combination of these. So for example, suppose you want to develop a training program that will help improve your Toastmasters club, not just the officers, but your actual club. You could conduct a gap analysis by asking your club members to list several things about their club that is done well and several things that they would like to improve upon. Let's say a member would like the way the guests are enthusiastically welcomed, and that member might also like to see the club members begin and end on time. Not a huge ask, but something that needs to be done. So with gap analysis, we want to ask the audience, how long have you been in Toastmasters? Have you performed this role before? Are you virtual? Are you in person or hybrid when you meet? You want to get participation from those who have held the role before. Best practices, what works, what doesn't. You want to have a conversation. You don't just want to read off of the TI provided slides of each of the duties.
Hey,
All right.
Brandi,
Yes.
hold on. Like, I'm seeing something in the chat here, and I just have to call this out. Anne is saying a study of what is desired and what is wanted equals the difference, or a gap analysis. Man, see, this is why we do it. You all are making it happen, and you all are sharing with us. We are super excited. Thank you, Anne, for sharing with us about that.
Thank you.
Just wanted
Yes.
to let you know that that was in there, because I was just like, oh, I can't let her go any further because that was just too good.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Yes, absolutely. Now, when you've determined the deficiencies, you've determined how long they've been in Toastmasters, you've determined what method they use to meet, you've determined all of those things. Now you've arrived at what they need to know. This is when you'll adapt your officer training content to your audience's needs. But before we do that, we want to review some aspects of the adult learning theory. We're in Toastmasters, we're having fun, we're speaking, but we are learning, and we are all adults, and we learn a little bit differently than our children do. So we look at Dr. Malcolm Knowles, who's a well-known authority in adult learning theory and has developed several principles about adult learning, 4 of which you see here and we're going to cover today. It is important to integrate these principles into your adapted officer training content. Now, you'll probably agree, I think we're all adults here, so we probably understand this, but we tend to decide for ourselves the importance of material based on its usefulness and relevance. Adults also have a wealth of knowledge and experience that others may find helpful. So in a good officer training session, facilitators take advantage of that valuable resource and shared experiences that adults can provide. Let's look at these 4 items on the screen. First, adults must be able to relate to the learning they need to relate the learning to their goals. For example, today here, we're learning about being able to go from speaker to trainer, whether we're doing that for our officer training sessions or we're doing that for other reasons. That is relating this material to your goals. Adults want to be involved in the learning process, and that's why it's important for the facilitator to solicit the reasons for attending the training program at the beginning so that the training material and the discussion can be adjusted accordingly and focused on those reasons. This also creates a captive audience. After all, you're giving them what they asked for. The training material must be related to the participants' experiences. Now, if you've ever trained at a TLI, if you've ever trained the officer training sessions, you know that you are provided with presentation material, and it's great to refer to. But if you've conducted your gap analysis and you find that you probably have a little bit more tenured members in the audience, don't have to go word for word because they've probably seen that material before. This is when you adjust. It needs to be related to their experiences. You want to make use of their experience by involving them in the discussions and the exercises. The benefit is that the participants often can contribute personal anecdotes and tips that the trainer may not have considered. Third, adults are motivated to learn when they identify a need to learn. So you want to talk about things that you've learned that's helped you in this role, especially when you're discussing with others who are performing the same role. New officers are there to learn. Experienced officers can learn new ways to perform the same tasks by hearing from others who may do things differently. All right, lastly, adults want practical answers for today's problems. So when you're presenting material, make sure it's relevant to the learner's daily tasks or problems. You want to emphasize how the learning can be applied. If the material is too theoretical, participants may have difficulty understanding its application to their personal situations. So think of it like this. You may have attended the same officer training multiple times, but today's problems are different than in previous years. All right. We're going to get to the point where we're adapting our content. And I kind of touched on this a moment ago when we were talking about the adult learning theory, but I really want to emphasize how this can improve your training sessions. Let's say you've conducted your gap analysis. You've asked the audience, Sally, how long have you been with Toastmasters? Have you performed this role before? What challenges are you facing? What do we need to know? That's what we're getting at. We're performing that gap analysis. In a situation where everyone in your class is new, all right, we get to train them. We get to tell them about their new role. We're going to use that TI provided presentation material. We're going to ask them what they've already started performing. We're talking about the Winter TLI session. So as a TLI officer training facilitator, there's something to consider. The members in your audience have either been performing this officer role since July, or they are a new officer because they're a member of a semi-annual officer club. So you want to ask what they've already started performing. You want to also focus on including discussion about all of the tasks that are on those slides in that presentation. In a situation where everyone in the room are tenured officers, I won't necessarily say that you don't need to refer to the presentation material. Have it there as a guide. Make sure you stay on topic, but you're probably going to have more of a discussion about how each attendee has performed their roles. Kelsey, you're a president. I'm a president. Let's talk. What works in your club and what works in my club? Let's collaborate and see what we can come up with. And in a situation where you have both, you want to ask new officers what tasks they've already performed get that knowledge, and then ask any experienced officers if they've already performed any tasks not previously mentioned, and then let's collaborate. I'm going to go over the information the TI provided document because I need to address those new officers, but I bet you every once in a while, I'm going to reach out to Donna Young or I'm going to reach out to Samantha Watt and I'm going to say, ladies, how would you address this? It's not just me lecturing, we're having a conversation.
Hey, Brandi,
Yes, Jesse.
I want to try something real quick.
Oh,
I'm going to
okay.
invite everybody to do a special exercise with me. All right. I want everybody to raise your hand if you've been a club officer for at least 1 year. Raise your hand using the emotion or the reactions if you can.
Oh.
Raise your hands. All right. I want to see this. Okay, good, good. I like it. Now, keep your hand raised if you've been a club officer for at least 2 years. Put your hand down if you have not been for more than 1 year, going into 2 years. All right. Let's jump to 5 years. You've been a club officer combined at some point.
Oh, I've got a
Man, still going. Still going.
Trying to figure out how to remove my hand. Hold on. There we go. Okay,
Oh,
there we go.
okay. All right. 7 years. Oh, okay. 10 years. 15 years. Oh, that got a couple to drop. Okay. 20 years. Oh, okay. Okay. I just have to say, Sally, and it looks like Sally is the woo, look at that. How many years, Sally? How many times have you been an officer total?
I can't raise my hand. I apologize.
I'm okay.
I'm on mobile, so I can't figure it out.
No worries. Well, let's see if we can raise your or lower your hand for you.
I love you, Sally.
All right. Well, either way, Donna Young, I think you were right behind her in the years. How many years have you been an officer, Donna? Approximately.
Approximately 10, 11 years.
10, 11 years. Ooh, and DJ, I think actually was the one. I got you guys switched because I don't see DJ's camera on. Sorry. DJ, you said 18 years in the chat? Holy moly's, everybody. We've got some experience in this room. I just had to, I wanted to see, you were talking about gap analysis. I was like, wait a second. What about this room? Can I apply it here? And what are we getting? Alex is 10 years. Whoo, man, we've got some really experienced people. So, hey, Brandi, we need to start calling on these people. I'm just saying.
That's exactly what I was about to suggest. So as co-chairs for TLI, Kelsey manages the officer training facilitators, and I work with the supplemental session facilitators. And Kelsey, I think you just found some names that you might be able to reach out to for this upcoming TLI session.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
I think so. And also, while we're on that topic, those that have trained for some time or have been an officer for some time, you know this, but I have not conducted a gap analysis, so I'm going to share this information for anyone who is new. If you are wanting to take the information you learned today and the skills and knowledge you learned today and lead a TLI officer training session, you get credit for your officer role as well. It's kind of like a 2-in-1, and you get that experience with training. So Kelsey Dean is our TLI officer training coordinator. I'm trying to get the words right. And she would be the one that you can reach out to if that's something that you'd be interested in. All right. Well, now that I know a little bit about who all's in the audience, I think that we were already scheduled to attend a break. We are going through this a little quickly. So I think what we'll do is we'll push this off just a little bit more, but we still will have our breaks. But let's continue with the next step that we were going to discuss today. And that is choosing your training methods. Now, I've mentioned before, this is really more so for those who have never led a TLI officer training session, that TI does provide us with training material. You'll have a presentation that you can use and reference. You have a facilitator guide that you can also reference that can help you along. You are not alone in this. We can also meet with you if you want to practice or if you want to get your feet wet before you get in there. We will provide you the support so that you can jump in and start leading these training sessions. But you also get the option, as we've talked about today, to analyze who is in your audience, adjust based on who's there, adjust based on how you prefer to train, and you get to use some of these training methods. So lecturing, for example, role playing, exercises, case studies, and demonstrations. If you remember, who can remember earlier on in the session, I gave a percentage of the amount of time that should be dedicated to lecturing. Does anyone remember the percentage that I said? Ooh, Anne, do you remember?
30%.
Absolutely, yes. See, that's that listener role that we use in some of our clubs. Yes, 30%. So your lecture should be no longer than whatever would be 30% whenever you're having that session. And we have on the slide no longer than X minutes because officer training sessions can be different. If you're president or VPE, you know, those sessions go an hour and a half. If you have the other officer sessions, those are an hour. But again, it's also going to depend on that gap analysis and how much detail you need to go into for your lecture. So that's why it's not really a number there. So the lecture is a prepared talk. It's the most used and abused technique in the training field. It's easy to abuse the lecture technique by talking too long. And I will apologize. You're hearing a lot of me today simply because we're teaming up with Kelsey and helping her out with her voice today. But typically you would see a back and forth type of technique. Hopefully, this does not result in a loss of participation and feedback from the group. Everyone's doing a great job. I am not able to see the chats, but I see a huge number down where the chat is. So I know that y'all are interacting with Kelsey. So thank you so much. But lecturing is effective if you have to cover a large amount of material in a short time. So the following are some suggestions to make it more effective and interactive. When you must lecture, don't forget to use your acquired public speaking skills. Now we're talking about speaker to trainer. You still learn some skills as a speaker that you will use as a trainer. So we're not saying to forget all of that. We just do it a little differently. You want to tell them, the audience, what you're going to tell them. Then you tell it to them. And then you tell them what you have just told them. Did y'all get that? I'm going to tell you what you're going to learn. We had an agenda, we had course objectives, and now I'm telling you what all of those mean. And then I'm going to tell you what I've just told you. Oh, that's a tongue twister. But by rephrasing the main points, you ensure retention of the material. Now, to make your lecture more interesting, you want to abandon the virtual lectern. Don't read from a script. Now I'm kind of looking at some notes here because this is a little bit of a longer training than what you would be doing in the TI officer training sessions. But you also want to personalize your talk by using stories and anecdotes to illustrate your points. Don't forget to include practical how-to material. When you're in the training sessions, you might have a tool or a resource that you use as an officer that you find that would be helpful for your audience. Use that, bring that with you, share that with them. Encourage members in your class to also share tools that help them. When you're lecturing, what are some ways that you can make lecturing more interesting? Does anyone have any ideas?
Engage the audience.
Engage the audience, absolutely, yes. What else? How else can we make lecturing more interesting? Ms. Donna Young.
A lot of times I'll look at the training materials and I won't move on to the next slide, but I'll ask a question about the theme of the next slide. Who's had to face this situation? And you go round robin and they talk about it. And by the time they're done, then I show the slide and go, look it, you guys could have taught this material. You not only highlighted everything here, you highlighted more than was in the training material. So
Absolutely.
I don't show them the slide until we've sort of talked around it.
I love it. I love that idea. Any other ideas? Yes, Miss CGD.
I think role playing would really, really be interesting. It kind of like breaks that monotone type atmosphere, you know what I mean? Just
Absolutely.
bringing people in to get them all, making them all feel like they are just as important as the speaker.
I agree. What is an officer role that you think role playing would be beneficial in? If we're thinking of the officer training sessions.
VP of
In
Education.
all honesty, I think all of them, but definitely the president, you know, going back and forth with the members, because that, to me, that is the most important role there is in the club, because they get to set the tone of the whole atmosphere of the club itself. But just being able to find out as the president if your members are comfortable with who you are.
Absolutely.
And then definitely VPPR. Yeah.
Yes.
Those two
I think
driving forces. Yeah.
a lot of I've heard VP of Education. Absolutely. Those are the president and VP of Education. Those sessions are pretty lengthy. There's a lot of information in there. As we're going into the winter session, we've already kind of experienced a little bit of that role for about 6 months. But in the summer session, this may be our first time, and you're going to receive a lot of information, but it definitely helps to put it into practice. I think VPM would be another one as well. All right. Now you can also, if you are meeting virtual or hybrid, you can drop handouts in the chat for other participants, or you can email them to them afterwards. You'll be able to get their email addresses if you need to do that. And then, of course, just like we just did, you want to ask questions to involve the group and check on that retention of information. The overarching theme here is to switch it up. Don't do one type of training for more than just a few minutes at a time. Great. Yes. Hold on. Let me see if I can use Donna's technique that she suggested. It's actually an exercise, so I'm going to use it a little bit later. We're going to do a little bit of an exercise here. So think about the most effective training program you've ever attended, and it does not have to be Toastmasters. It could be work, it could be anything. Recall the trainer. Think about and identify the reasons the trainer was so effective. Who has a situation that has already come to mind? It could be, oh, Sam, was that a hand?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about it.
Well, I am a trainer by career.
Yes.
And my boss is actually a really skilled trainer. And the thing that I really admire about the way he can train is his ability to weave in questions constantly. He keeps the audience engaged by constantly asking questions. What do you think of this? What would you be doing in this scenario? Kind of like Donna mentioned, like you mentioned, but he just does it really naturally. And I know that's kind of an innate skill and something you have to kind of learn to do really effectively, but just asking questions. So you're reading material, make sure you dot it with, pepper it with questions to the audience so that they are not just listening, but they're becoming a part of the experience.
Absolutely. And, you know, as you were explaining that, I'm thinking of myself as a participant and how, yes, it is very important to break that lecture up or that training up. But I also thought about the virtual world, and our TLI sessions, all with the exception of one this season, is going to be virtual. So one thing you definitely want to make sure is that you are checking in and engaging with your audience, because there are things happening around those members that you can't see. And you want to make sure that they're focused and they're on track with what you're training. So absolutely. Who else has an effective training program that they'd like to share? Yes, Anne.
So I attended a training session where the woman really got the audience involved. I'm going to call it games, but it wasn't really games. And those interactions between the people and the movement of the bodies. After sitting in a chair for a couple of hours, it was really good to just get up and get the blood flowing.
Absolutely. Yes, that is always a good idea. Whether it's virtual or in person, you can still achieve that. And it also helps if it is, like you mentioned, a training that's lasting for several hours. Absolutely. Karen.
Yeah, she stole mine. That's what it was. I was just in a safety training, and he did lecturing, but he also had games that we just answered questions to. We didn't get to move around, but that definitely made you listen. He had little prizes. And so virtually that's a little harder, but definitely doable, some form of that, just to keep people engaged. And then that, you know, really listening, just like we do in our meetings, so we can answer those questions, I think is a good way to engage people.
I love it. And, you know, I've referenced the TI presentation material for the officer training sessions several times, but that doesn't mean you can't bring your own materials to supplement that training. Bring in some games that you think would be beneficial. That's a really good idea. And I think that the audience may not expect that if they've not experienced that at a TLI before. And so it may be just a great way to help reinforce that information. Sally.
Yes, I'm just going to piggyback off of what Ann and Karen just said, but I'm going to add another element. Don't forget your humor, because some of our trainings can sometimes be so redundant that people come to our TLI sessions just knowing that this is, like Ann said, we're spending hours in our chair, and especially if it's a virtual session, that we not forget humor. Don't leave it at the door. Bring it on in, and provide several opportunities for humor. You can still present and be professional, and you can still present the material that you're required to present, but don't forget your humor. Don't forget your lightheartedness, because sometimes it can just be, I mean, I hate to say it, but it can be a drag.
Yeah.
But when you incorporate humor, it just gives everyone a little bit of a chance to breathe easier and to just know you're in a safe place. You're here to network. You're here to share ideas.
Absolutely. And you said something too that I love that we mention a lot of times in Toastmasters meetings, and that is that we're in a safe space. We are. And so I want to piggyback on that and say, whether it's your first time leading a TLI session or your 15th time leading a TLI session, we're virtual and things can happen. We're in a safe space. So if you're not able to share your screen, that's okay. If your audio is not working, that's okay. It is okay to go along with the flow of what's happening in the session, because we are in a safe space. Things happen. We all know that that can happen in this world. So yes, absolutely. And Donna.
I think we can't assume that people understand the vocabulary. Now, let's face it. There are certain things like there's standard stock letters you can send out when you are contacted by a lead, but it doesn't mean people can find it. I mean, you can say it's on the TI site. You can say it's on the D25 site. People still go, what, where, who? I mean, and then of course people have either free toast or they schedule their things differently. I mean, people get lost with the technology. Mm-hmm. So having a print screen of what it looks like and a link in your training that you're willing to share could mean a great deal, not only to new officers, but also to experienced officers.
I agree. And yes, absolutely. And you know, it may, if you have the email addresses of those that are participating, it might also be beneficial to send that as a kind of a recap. Here's the links that we shared today. I know, like, for example, today we have Miss Sally. She's joining us, and I don't know if she's still there, but I know she started out in the car. And when we're attending these sessions, we might be in the car and we can't access those links, or at least after the session, we can't. So that's another thing, just making sure that the members have the tools and accesses to get that information that you've referenced. Great job. Miss Karen.
Yes, I just wanted to add a little something on that safe space in case there's someone on here that's thinking about doing a training that they haven't before. But the first time I did it, I did have a chance to talk to everybody. Everybody was experienced. but I had trouble with my internet and I kept getting dropped. And because we had set that stage, every time I dropped off, they just continued on. Someone just picked up and they continued talking and I would get back on. I was so embarrassed, but I thought, you know what? I can't help it. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with my internet. So it was a great, just when you set that up right, like I said, they just continued because I told them I'm having trouble. If I leave, I'll be right back. And so it was a great session just because they continued on.
Absolutely. It's like when you have a singer on stage and their mic goes out and the audience keeps on singing. It is great. It's a great space. And especially when you do have members in there that are experienced, yeah, they can take over, no problem. Najef, how are you?
Doing good, thank you. And I was just thinking how we learn from our examples and from mistakes from the past. I remember the first time when I did the training, I just ran 1 hour nonstop just talking. And I learned, the best way is micro learning. Just break the training into the small chunks when you do the presentation so they can chew that, so they can learn by easily taking those processes and just take it small rather than just everything throwing them at once.
Absolutely. Yes. Break it up. And you know what? I did the same thing the first time I trained. I was in the facilitator guide. I was a little stiff. I was a little nervous, and that's to be expected. But once you're done, you can breathe. And then you think, oh, I probably should have done this, that, and the other differently. Oh, are we going to hear from Kelsey?
Testing. How do I sound?
You sound amazing.
Oh my gosh, my voice is back, y'all. I can speak. Oh, I'm going to take over the rest of this presentation because I've been holding in my words. No, I'm just kidding. I heard so many. This was a memorable trainer because. So I just wanted to make sure I caught them all. Humor, personal stories, personality, breaking up the training, exercises, being prepared, knowing your material, but also adapting to the situation and using the resources available in the room. Did I cover them all? Were there more?
I think you did.
This was an excellent exercise, you guys. And I think that I am prepared to take over my parts, Brandi, if that's okay with you.
It is, but can I just add one thing? You said something that triggered something for me, and I want to make sure that we address it real quickly, and that is knowing your material. You're going to know your material. You have the presentation there, but what if someone in the audience asks the question that you do not know how to answer? How do you handle that?
Are we paid to know everything?
I get paid a lot.
We get paid the same amount to know everything or just a little somethings, right? We don't
the
have
audience.
to know everything. I love it. Ask the audience. Use the resources in the room. We already talked about a different example of using your resources. Here is another example of using your resources. And that gap analysis that we talked about back in the very beginning of today's presentation helped you know who to call on if you need help with something.
Absolutely. Now, what if it's a one-on-one session and they don't know? I think we're in a safe space where we can say, you know what, I don't know that, but this is an opportunity for both of us to learn. Let me find out and I'll follow up and we'll both learn this together.
I love it.
Jesse, what do you have for us?
So I just have like one question for you. Why did the PowerPoint presentation go to therapy?
I'm going to have to get back to you on. No, wait, what is
No. It had an issue, or it had too many issues with its transitions.
Wow.
Yep, I know that.
Jesse's got the jokes for us today, y'all.
I was trying to get that. There you go. See, or no, hold on. Hold on. Why did the public speaker become a gardener? Because he knew how to plant ideas and watch them grow.
Hello.
Oh, there's some public speaking jokes just for you all today. I wanted to make sure that we got those in there.
There's the humor that we talked about.
You're welcome.
All right,
I
Kelsey,
think we're ready to move on, and I can take back over. Next slide,
right.
please. We are moving on from lecture to the other types of interactive methods for instruction, and y'all have already hit on some of these. We've talked about adult learning theory, and adults learn best by doing. So putting people into some of these other types of training exercises is another way for you to break up some of that lecture. It capitalizes on the fact that by letting individuals become actively involved in learning experiences, that provides the highest retention rate. The first one that we'll talk about is role play. And we've hit on this a little bit, but let's make sure everybody knows what role play is. It enables the participants to practice the new methods they have learned during classroom instruction. Because these are simulated situations, participants can experiment and try out the new methods they've learned without the risks such experimenting involves in real life. Through role playing, participants develop a greater awareness of the needs and feelings of others, awareness of their personal weaknesses, and greater insight into the dynamics of various situations. And this officer training is a great way to do role playing because maybe somebody in officer training at this time of the year has been doing that role since July, and they have a current situation going on that they might need help solving. They could do a quick role play with another person in that role and help get new ideas on how to handle that particular role. Anybody have an example of role play that they've used before that has worked? Donna Young.
Well, I haven't used it before, but I practice it regularly. And that's how do you talk to a club lead? Because you can send out the email, but if you don't follow up with a text or with a phone call, they're probably not going to show up. So, you know, role playing, how do you talk to somebody? How do you cold call somebody? I think it's for a VP membership. I think that's essential.
Excellent. I love how you tied it to VP membership because there was a section before that Brandi was covering where you guys were talking about role plays and everybody was blowing up the chat with VP membership is excellent for role play because you can simulate talking to a new lead with experienced people that can play the role of the new lead, but also give you ideas as you go along in the role play exercise. Thanks, Donna Young. I love calling you Donna Young, by the way.
The whole
it has
name.
To be the
you
whole
can't,
name. Yes.
You can't just do Donna. I think another example, Kelsey, that comes to mind for me is I mentioned before we're both presidents in each of our clubs. Maybe because you've served as president longer than I have, I might come to you with a leadership situation where I might say, you know, I'm having trouble with this particular. How do I have a conversation with one of my officers regarding their role? And maybe we can role play that.
I've had to do that already. So you play the person you're talking to and I'll play the president and then I'll simulate exactly how I did that with somebody else.
Oh, that would be so helpful.
Get with me after today's session.
Yes, I will.
All right. Our next interactive method is exercises, and we've been doing those all along today. So I'm going to try not to belabor this point since you've seen that in action. You can create exercises to fit the specific needs of your particular session. That's part of that being prepared part. Have some of those ready. And if the conversation goes one way and there's experienced people there and they don't need that exercise, you don't necessarily have to use it. But the next time you facilitate that session, you may have all new officers and you need that exercise. So have what I'm going to call a couple of back pocket exercises ready for whatever officer session you like to facilitate most. Be sure to tie those exercises back to learning objectives so that your participants don't feel like you're just filling time. They're actually gaining knowledge and spending their time in a valuable way. During the exercises and during the role play, you can give feedback to each of your participants, and that helps them learn along the way also. You know, timely feedback is a major tenet of Toastmasters. So like I just tied that point to a course objective, see how we do this, y'all? All right, moving right along is a case study, and this is a written or verbal presentation of an actual incident, except that it lacks complete information. You leave it open on purpose so that your participants have to provide that interpretation. They read the case, and then with your guidance as a facilitator, they discuss as a group. It enables participants to develop their analytical and problem-solving skills as they identify possible solutions to the situation that was described in the case study. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just a way to prompt discussion, and the only criteria is that the analysis or recommendation be supported by logic and realistic expectations. Since it can be time consuming, you may not rely on this one solely. You may use this one very sparingly. You may cut the discussion to a shorter amount of time, but just because the fact that you presented the case study, it gets people thinking about it, even if you don't go through all of the possible solutions. And then you can choose to share whether you release the actual resolution to that case study, or if you just let the participants come up with their own. Last on this slide is the demonstration. And this one is used mostly, I think, in VPE. You might demo actual steps a VPE would take. Click here, click here, click here to approve a Basecamp level completion or a Club Central level completion. You might actually show those steps on screen live through the TI website. And then again, that whole process is about to change. So you might not share that in this round of TLI, but when the process is new, that would be the best time to demo that step by step by step, because it's a new process that everybody needs to learn. I see that laughing, Donna Young. It's about to change.
You know, another example would be in a VPPR session. Maybe you are demonstrating how you create promotional material for your club, whether it's using Canva or PowerPoint or whatever it is that you find useful. That's another example of a demonstration.
Woohoo! Anybody else used a demo for any other officer role that we haven't already talked about?
I thought of something for case study. Case study to me, I'm in school and I think of an assignment, but I really started thinking about it from our perspective and what we're trying to achieve. So earlier on in our training session, our TLI training session, we did a gap analysis, right? And we identified how long they've been there and what role they're in, what they know, and maybe we've discussed a challenge that they have. You can take that challenge and use it as a case study. And now everyone can talk about, okay, well, Susie Q over here is having this experience. What would y'all do? And there's your case study. So it may not necessarily be something you prepared ahead of time, but it's something that you can slip in there if it seems appropriate.
So you're telling me that you can use an officer training session for real-time, real-world problem solving?
I've never done it, but yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, absolutely.
I love it.
You have experts there. Let's talk it out.
I believe I've attended some area council meetings where we did that. Also, Emily Murray, district director.
Hi. So I haven't done it in a TLI session, but I do quarterly trainings with my division directors, and we are looking at right now live studies. What are some things that are going on with your area directors or your clubs that we can help as a team address right now? So we are using that live as we go this year. It's a wonderful thing to be able to use for my directors to grow with.
I feel like it's one of the most valuable ways to use my time in any training session that I'm attending, because it's helping me accomplish something that is happening somewhere else, but now I'm spending time in training, learning how to solve my problem in the real world.
Wasn't that one of Malcolm Knowles's adult learning theory items, I think?
Applying it to the real world?
I think so.
I love it. I think we're ready to move to the next slide.
All right. Now, if you've prepared good content that addresses your audience's needs and you've integrated those participative activities that we've talked about, you will reduce the probability of having problems. Yet, not all participants may be receptive to your efforts. So this is going to go into a whole nother section. And I know that we skipped over a break. This section is going to go a little bit longer. So I think, so that we don't have any problems and wiggling in their seats or need another cup of coffee, I think this would be a good time for us to go ahead and incorporate that break from earlier. We were going to do 15 minutes, so let's round it up to 9:55 at 5. I guess that would be 10:10, would it not? All right, how about everyone meet us back here at 10:10, and we're going to talk about some challenges that you might face.
Recording. All right, welcome back, everybody. Oh, yeah, let's get this party going, and I'll hand it back to Brandi and Kelsey. So, Brandi, there you go.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for coming back. I hope that was a well-used break. We're going to dive into the topic of managing difficult behavior. And the wording is a little weird. I don't know that necessarily difficult behavior, maybe challenging, depending on the situation. But we're going to talk about it. So, unfortunately, not all participants may be receptive to your efforts. Some may try to disrupt the group and get you off track. To get back on track, we want to focus on the current topic by restating the topic you're currently addressing. Now, some of the most difficult problems that you'll encounter are people problems. We've talked about some of those technical problems, and that's we can manage those. How do we manage the people problems? Well, at times you may have to tactfully address disruptive individuals when they continue to have a negative influence on the group. And we want to draw out shy participants. We want to make sure everyone is receiving the message that we're delivering. So we have on the screen 5 different types of people that could pose a challenge to us when we are leading our training sessions. We have the talkative people, kind of long-winded. They monopolize the entire conversation. Since it's important for other participants to have the opportunity to contribute, it's your responsibility to deal with the talkers. So to divert their energy, suggest that the talkative people participate in active listening. They might be pretty poor at listening anyway if they're used to being the one to talk throughout the entire session. So you want to prevent them from stealing valuable lesson time. Summarize the major points made and turn the discussion back to the group. If those talkers insist on participating, ask them close-ended questions to which they can reply yes or no. And we'll talk a little bit more about closed questions in just a moment. So that's your talkative people. Then we go to the other side of the spectrum to silent types. Some participants never say anything. They keep their camera off during training. I want to put a little stopper here and just say, sometimes we might have to. Sometimes we might be driving. Sometimes we might have other stuff going on in the background. But you can not be considered silent if you're engaging in the chat. So there are multiple ways that you can engage and be participative. Shy or reserved people rarely offer any comments in response to open questions because they may feel that they're not in a safe space. They might feel that their comments or ideas will be ridiculed by the group. So the solution is to include the silent people in the discussion, encourage them to participate and support their ideas. Ask them open-ended questions because it gives them an opportunity to express an idea without wondering if their answer is precisely right. If you're having a problem eliciting a response, follow with an expectant, friendly look and then listen actively and respond only when necessary. And we'll practice some of that as well. Then we come to the menu item of crab. No, wait, not crab, not the little animal that we see accompanying SpongeBob. No, these are the people that find fault with everything. And it's not the material, it's the virtual environment that disturbs them. If you have such pessimists in the crowd, you may hear complaints like, do we have to participate in this exercise? Or, I've been to this same training multiple times already. It never changes. These people can kind of put a damper on the training. And so you want to address that. Ignoring complainers only gives them license to continue. You want to declaw the crabs and acknowledge their complaints and determine if their complaints are legitimate. If the complaints are problems that can be easily corrected, have the crabs suggest solutions and get feedback from the group. If you find that their complaints are not justified, suggest that you hope that they'll reserve judgment until the program is complete. Okay, we're going to practice all these. Go through the last 2. Know-it-alls. Oh, Kelsey, that I did not mean to transition to you after I said know-it-alls. Yes, ma'am.
That was funny. We have a question in the chat that I want to revisit from the talkative person section of this slide.
Absolutely.
And this person that put this in the chat must have been thinking the exact same thing that I was thinking, because I had just put something about the same topic in the chat. The question is, how do we stop the talkative people? I've struggled with that.
Well,
and my question was around, is it okay to say, let's give others a chance to contribute if you've tried the redirect process that Brandi talked about in the talkative person section? Anybody else have thoughts about that? Let's talk about the silent type section also, maybe hear from someone that we haven't heard from today. Jim, Alex, Shooty, Malcolm, Emric. Anybody have an input? Is it okay to say, let's give others a chance to contribute?
Oh,
I'm seeing some nods. I'm seeing Emily.
I'm
having a problem with my connection, so bear with me.
You're in and out.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Go ahead, Emily.
I personally am not a fan of let's give others a chance to contribute, because it shuts down the person. I feel like it can shut down the person who's been talkative. So I want to acknowledge their contributions while also gently reminding them that there are other people. So I tend to go in a slightly different phraseology, but this is my personal impressions and in my opinion only. So I tend to use things like, I love all this participation. Some of you are really into this. This is great. I do want to hear from some new voices though for a minute. So who else? Who hasn't had a chance? Who else has things they want to share? Which allows, in my opinion, again, allows the people who've been contributing to feel validated and feel like they're still valuable, but also reminds them that they're not the only ones there.
Okay, so I'm hearing it's okay to say it, but how you say it is what's important. Acknowledge their participation first. Thank you for contributing so many ideas. And it wasn't just what I said right there, it was how I said it, right?
Yeah.
Enthusiasm, appreciation. Thank you for contributing so much to today's session. I want to hear from some new voices. Let's hear from someone who hasn't spoken today yet. I love it.
You can also ask someone once a talkative person has said something, what are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah.
Sam, what thoughts do you have on that topic? Or how do you do it in your club? You can piggyback on what they're saying, and that also gives that validation as well.
I will also, if we're running into somebody who's kind of just bogarting things, I will also just simply, we're going to talk about this thing, but this time I'm going to call on people. So that sets up the stage immediately for this person I've heard from all the time. You can raise your hand all you want. You're not going to talk. I'm going to go and call on somebody who hasn't participated yet.
I love Emily's voice in that example. I'm going to call on people. That is the most exciting thing I've heard today. And it's around calling on people, which is usually the least exciting thing you hear, right? I love it. It's all in the tone of your voice and the words that you choose. And I love what Sally put in the chat also about when you're facilitating a TLI session in D25, you're representing the culture of our district. And we want to be the friendliest district in the world. So she's agreeing with Emily that it's okay to say what you need to say, but it's how you say it that is key. We have lots of other contributions in the chat. Keep that up, guys. Brandi, I'm going to let you take it back.
Okay, well, know-it-alls. Well, these are the people who are experts. They're experts at whatever it is that you're talking about, and that is valuable. But it can also be condescending as they add to or correct what you've said. This is disturbing to the group because these individuals offer unsolicited opinions and contradictions, which undermine your authority. In dealing with know-it-alls, avoid getting into arguments, please, and try to promote win-win situations without discrediting you or the know-it-alls. Can someone think of an example? Now, I've never, in all of the TLI sessions I've attended, I have never encountered this. But if it were to occur and you had someone in the session who was a know-it-all, as a training facilitator, how might you address that?
Without naming names?
Without naming, or you can give them pseudonyms. Like Bugs Bunny said. I think we can use, one of the things that Emily said, I think could also be used. You want to validate what they're saying. They're the know-it-alls. They're the experts. I've never thought of it that way. I've never thought of it from that perspective. You can validate what they're saying and then have others contribute. Are there any other tactics that anyone can think of?
I like something in the chat. Stay
Okay.
calm, listen actively, set boundaries, and choose your battles wisely. We're not trying to actually battle with people in our officer facilitator section. But if you have some of these difficult behaviors, like Brandi said, you don't want to argue with them and you don't want to call out every time someone does something that you don't like, right? That's what we mean by choosing your battles wisely. Give them the opportunity to speak, and then if you need to redirect them, wait a couple of times. Don't do it every time they speak.
Like it.
Kelsey, I liked Anne's answer though. She said, that wasn't the answer I was looking for, but thank you for your contribution.
I like it.
I might also
ooh.
reverse that. Thank you for your contributions.
Fusion.
No one has hit on the answer I'm looking for yet. Does anybody else have any ideas? I might switch those two phrases. Thank them first and then move along to the next idea.
Nice. I like that one too. Man, I'm taking notes.
This is being recorded.
This is being recorded.
Oh.
But you can take your notes as well. But yes, absolutely what everyone is saying. You want to acknowledge the know-it-all's main points and thank them for their contributions. It's as if y'all already knew how to do this. So we have one final difficult behavior or challenging behavior that we want to address, and that's conflict. Occasionally, disruptive people may cause a conflict among several participants. If this happens, quickly step in and play the arbitrator before the situation escalates. Again, I want to say, especially for anyone who has never led a TLI officer training session, I have never seen this happen, but remember, we also mentioned that this same techniques that are being mentioned can be used outside of Toastmasters as well. So you may have this happen. Don't take sides. Concentrate on points of agreement. To find a resolution, you want to emphasize the importance of ideas rather than personalities. If the discussion drags on and it just takes too much time, maybe you call for a break. Maybe you suggest that the discussion be continued at the end of the session. Let's sideline that for the moment and let's focus on what we're here to achieve. Mastering skills to manage challenging participants. It does take time and practice. Just like with public speaking, just with any of the skills that we're learning, it does take practice. Since it is safer to make mistakes as a role player, this might be a way that you can incorporate that technique in these sessions. You also will get additional experience in participating if you, as the facilitator, participate in the role playing, or also just observing how two members in the audience do it. So there's a lot of benefit from being an active participant or an observer as you're encountering some of these challenging situations. Okay. We talked earlier, I mentioned open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. I said we were going to come back to that. So that's what we're doing now. So by building questions into your discussion and directing them to individuals in the group, you reinforce that adult learning theory that we talked about by stimulating the participants' interest and motivating them to listen more carefully. I know I really listen when I'm in Toastmasters meeting, especially during table topics, because Jessie could call on me at any moment, and I just really don't want to be that person that says, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? But it's okay. You can ask several types of questions. We've talked about open and closed, but there's also direct and overhead. So a direct question is one that's asked of a particular person, whereas an overhead question is directed to the entire group. We've done that a couple of times today. So I know I keep picking on her, but she's one of my favorite redheads. So if I were to say, Sam, what do you think of? Or I can say, okay, who has thoughts on this? That would be the example of direct versus overhead. An open question solicits one's opinion or attitude So a variety of responses are available. The participant isn't put on the spot because the right answer can fall within a reasonable range. There's no right answer. An example. What should our membership goal look like this year? There's no right answer. Let's talk about it. Let's brainstorm. What are your thoughts? We talked about open questions being ideal for a certain type of behavior. Ooh, let's do the listener roll real quick. Who remembers what type of behavior, and I can go back to the previous slide, who remembers which behavior an open question was ideal for? Here were the 5 different types.
Silent.
It was silent, and I was going to say everyone is exhibiting it right now with no answers. That was it. Great job. Yes, silence. You want to give them, you want to be able to get their opinion. This is not the talkative person that you want a yes or no question from. This is the, well, Sally, what are your thoughts? How do you think that we can achieve this, that, and the other? And it brings her out to be able to answer that question. We did talk about closed questions. These tend to be factual where the answer includes a specific piece of information. So an example of that might be, Shooty, do you know what our membership goal was last year? There's not really much for interpretation. It is what it is. What was our membership goal last year? That's going to be the difference between those open and closed questions. Now, if no one offers an answer, you pause for a few seconds to let the participants gather their thoughts and formulate an answer. After observing body language or cues that indicate someone has an idea, or maybe even checking in the chat, you call on that person to reply. If you see someone unmute real quick, there's your person. If you see someone who looks like they're thinking about it, Kelsey? No. If you see someone who's thinking about it, that's your person. All right, now when developing questions, make sure they're simply worded. You want to avoid technical jargon. I believe we talked about this earlier. Miss Donna Young brought this up. When we start talking about free toast hosts and we start throwing out acronyms and we start throwing out systems that someone has never heard of before, you might lose folks. They're busy trying to interpret what you just said. So make sure that you simplify your conversation. You want to ask questions that are thought-provoking, yet aren't beyond the participant's realm of knowledge. Oh, is that a tables topics question or what? You want to amplify points that haven't been fully covered by relating questions to the program objective. Any other thoughts when it comes to direct, open, overhead, or closed questions? What are some that you have found effective, either in your training classes or in your clubs?
We have a question from the chat also, Brandi.
There we go. Let's talk about that.
When you have an open question, do you address the specific individual? And I think I have an answer, but I want to hear from somebody we haven't heard from.
Oh.
What say you? Is that Samantha Watt coming off mute?
No. That was a no. That was a, but I think Jim came off of mute.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I did. I think you tackle both ways. You speak to the individual, then in the course of your speaking to them, you kind of broaden your response and address to your audience as a whole.
Okay, so the answer is both, right? Sometimes you address it to a specific individual, and sometimes you address it to the whole group, because we're all about providing variety in our training, because that's what's going to keep people interested, right? So it depends what you did 2 minutes ago. You change it up this time, right?
Were you speaking to me in that case?
Anybody?
Oh, okay.
That was a thought-provoking question. I think Jim is thinking, but also Donna, did you have something to add?
The only problem with an open-ended question is you could get your talker taking control again. Or if you have an open-ended question and you call on what I call your ringer, like, you know, anytime I'm having a problem with someone, I tell Jody Sanders at the beginning, Jody, I announced to everybody, Jody, you have so much experience. I'm going to call on you after every question when I get stuck and I'm not sure of the answer because you have so much information. So if someone is being a real pain, I may call on Jody first just to get them, just to, you know, keep things on track, like we're losing time. Because she not only answers the question, she'll give an anecdote at the same time to make it very clear.
So what I'm hearing is you're adapting what you're asking, how you're asking it, and to whom you're asking it as you go along, depending on the situation. And that is how you become a trainer.
Wait, so we're doing that gap analysis at the beginning, but we're constantly delivering information and assessing at the same time?
Reevaluating the needs of your audience as you're delivering content. Wow.
That's a lot.
That's next level multitasking.
It is.
But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then it'll
does.
become second nature to you.
It truly, truly does. You see, and the thing is too, and Jeff kind of talked on this earlier where he said the first time I trained, I just went through the whole thing and lectured the whole thing. And afterwards he said, you know, I probably should have done something different. It's a safe space. We've mentioned that a couple of times. I know you've probably heard that many times in Toastmasters, but it is. You try something. If that doesn't work, switch it up and see where you're getting your reactions from and where you're getting the most engagement.
I'm going to equate this to cooking. The first time I cook a new recipe, I do it exactly like the recipe says. I do exact measurements. I do it in the same steps that the recipe says. And then once I get familiar with this recipe, I'm going to change it up every time I make it, right? That's how you get better as a trainer.
Oh. Ah. Going back to that crab. All right. Now, any other thoughts on the question techniques before we move on? Okay, we're going to enter into an exercise. We're going to put some of this all together and see how this works. I'm going to need 2 volunteers, but I'm not going to tell you what you're volunteering for. Makes it fun. 2 volunteers. I got Jim. Now, what happens when you don't have a volunteer? It transitions into a voluntold. So I have Jim and I have Emily. Woohoo! Okay. My 2 volunteers will be a trainer and a participant. Now, Jim raised his hand first, so I'm going to have him be the trainer and I'm going to have Emily be the participant. Now, the rest of us are going to be observers. So even though we didn't raise our hand, even though we're not involved in the role play, we still have a part in the play here. So you want to make sure you pay attention. So participant, that would be Emily. I'm going to go back and I'm going to ask you, actually they're here on the screen. Which of these 4 would you like to play? We have know-it-all, crab, the silent type, or the talkative type.
Sounds like she wants to be the silent type.
I'm gonna do something different, be the silent type.
Look at that. Look at you trying something new. No. Okay, perfect. Now, what's going to happen is, Jim, now that you know which disruptive behavior will be used, take a look here and look at the skills discussed on how to effectively handle the silent type.
This also teaches me how to get out of it.
Okay.
All right, so for the silent type, this is going to be someone who is shy or reserved. People rarely offer any comments in response to open questions. All right.
I can't imagine Emily being able to execute this role.
I know, I'm excited. I want to see. I want to see how this goes.
Challenge this morning.
All right, so Jim, I'm going to ask you, how would you're training, you're at TLI, you're doing an officer training session. Emily is silent. How would you get her to come out of her shell?
I would just initially, I would call upon her. I would pose a question, and I would direct it specifically to Emily for a reply.
Okay, let's play it out. So if you're training a session, let's see, what is an officer role session that you're very familiar with?
Oh, that's a good one. We'll say treasure.
Okay, we're in a treasure session, and Emily is really silent. So we're going along and we're learning some of the main roles. And what's an important task that a treasurer should know?
Oh, she needs to be able to prepare a budget.
Okay. Now, Emily hasn't said anything this entire time. How might you engage her to see if she's picking up on any of the information that you're providing?
So Emily, during the course of training, we've covered the need to prepare an annual budget for your club. Also covered the need for just a regular monthly bookkeeping for transactions, money flow in and out, your monthly expenses, and need to pay your club dues to international. How do you feel with what we've accomplished, what we've covered so far?
Okay.
Tell me more about that.
Well, there's a lot.
It is a lot. It certainly is a lot of information we covered, but is there one thing in particular that stands out that is a challenge for you, or you have that's going to be, I guess, a source of, I guess, short-term sore spot for you?
Well, maybe balancing a budget.
That can be a challenge one. I have a spreadsheet here that I'll be happy to forward to you. You can review it, and if you have questions, we can arrange for time offline. We can go through it together to help you improve your comfort level. What do you think?
Okay.
Okay, good. Wonderful. How's your quilting been going?
It's wonderful. I'm working on a Christmas one now, and I don't even like Christmas.
Well, good. What's your color theme? You have all the traditional colors?
Yes, very obnoxiously green and yellow, no, gold and red, but I threw some black in because that matches me.
Good. You have a little elf in your motif?
I don't think there's an elf, but there is lots of holly.
Okay. Wonderful. We look forward to seeing your quilt. Perhaps you can bring us a picture next time.
Thank you.
What just happened? Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see. This was not scripted, obviously.
OMG.
But okay. I will not offer thoughts yet. This is where us as the audience get to offer our thoughts. Oh, what did you think about Jim's technique with the silent type? I see the chat numbers coming up. Oh, go ahead.
He found a topic that she just couldn't not talk about, which was her club.
Absolutely. That was unexpected. That was great. I'm taking notes myself. Like, oh, okay. Any other thoughts? Then I saw Kelsey raising a hand, but I think she got excited maybe about something in the chat. That was amazing. That was unexpected. That you were really trying to ask Emily the questions, and then I didn't even expect for you to, you know what? I've seen her somewhere before. I think I might know a topic that, and all of a sudden she was no longer silent. She was a situational silent person. That was a great example.
Fun.
That was fun.
Brandi, can we do another one and use two different role players and a different difficult behavior?
I love it. Let's go back. Let's go back. All right. Now, again, I will ask for 2 volunteers. You kind of already know what you're signing up for at this point. We'll implement the voluntold.
Have fun with it. Pick something that you don't normally do, like Emily did, because that was the best example and exercise of the day, y'all.
It really was.
It'll be a hard one to follow, but I know somebody is up to this challenge.
Okay. I think we're going to have to implement the voluntold.
I'll go again.
Okay, here's a good way. Let's see if we can get a response here. So I'm going to ask Kelsey, how many people do we have on? 16?
Mm-hmm.
Choose a number between 1 and 16.
8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Phyllis.
Really?
You're one of ours. And then what's another number between 1 and 16?
14.
And I gotta guess, sorry, 16. Malcolm, are you able to hear us? You might not be there. What's another number between 1 and 16?
5.
1, 2, 3, 4. Sam. Sam and Phyllis. Now, Phyllis was first, so Phyllis will be our trainer. So, Sam, would you like to be the know-it-all, the crab? We have silent, but I think we want to try to do something different, or the talkative type.
I'll let you pick, Brandi.
You want me to pick? Oh, no. Hold on.
Oh, she's got to be the crab.
Oh, she's going to be the crab.
That's what I want to.
Okay, we want you to be crabby, Samantha. You're going to have to step outside of your character.
Fine.
I can do it. You can do it.
Are you already? She's already practicing. Okay, we're going to do it. All right, now, Phyllis. Let me take you back. So here are some ways that you can handle a crab. And remember that these people find fault with everything. It's not the material, it's the physical environment that disturbs them. These people can put a damper on the rest of the group if not properly dealt with, and ignoring them only gives them license to continue. So, what type of, and you may already have a scenario in mind, so if you do, let me know. But if not, just think of an officer training session that you might be leading, and Sam is one of your participants.
Okay, and she's a crab.
Okay.
Okay, so I get to set the tone?
You get
or
to
does
set
she,
the tone.
Can she? Okay, I get to set the tone.
What are you teaching?
What am I teaching?
What officer
Oh,
session?
first of all, hi Samantha, how are you?
Hey Phyllis, I'm good. I've had a really long day, and just another one of these TLIs I have to do.
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping this hour is short, if you know what I mean.
But you did look at all of the credentials, right? You know it's going to be 3 hours, and you signed up for it, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, because I had to.
Oh, you had to, or did you want to?
I had to. My officers told me I had to come. It was the DCP point.
Okay. All right. Well, Samantha, are you not having a good day today?
No, it was a long day. It's Monday, and I have to come to a 3-hour training session.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry you feel the way that you feel, but normally when we commit to something, we can't have the type of mindset that I'm hearing right now. It's just so unlike you. So what can I do to help?
I guess if you could just make this as engaging as possible, because I've been to a bunch of these and I get talked at, and it's not a great use of my time.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you feel the way that you feel, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that you're open about how you feel, but there are other people that's in the audience, and you could like put a damper on the whole training itself. Just because you feel the way that you feel doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else feels that way. So I want to pose a question to you. What is it that you can do, or what can you help me do to make this more exciting, not only just for you, but for everybody else that's in the meeting? Help me out. Because I want you to be happy more than anything. I want you to be enthused. I want you to get what's needed to be gotten out of this training. So what can I do to help or enhance this situation that I'm leading?
I guess just the more interaction and, ask for my ideas, because I have a lot of ideas, but I feel like I never get heard in these meetings.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. You seem like you really seem like you're really engaged, or you really want to make these trainings more productive. Have you ever thought about being a trainer yourself?
I mean, how can you stay mad at Phyllis? I mean, come on.
Okay, case closed.
There you go. All right, I will hold my thoughts for the end. I want to hear from everyone else. What did y'all think about the technique? Sam was. And unfortunately, even though, that is not what you would normally encounter with Sam, she did bring up some situations that you may encounter, and they may not verbalize it. You may see it on their face, or they may be thinking it. Oh, I'm here because I have to. How might you address those individuals? See, wheels.
I loved Phyllis's tone.
Yeah, she was very calm.
She was
the
very
entire time.
calm, and her tone communicated to me that she really meant what she said. Not only was she calm, she has endless patience. And like Samantha said, how can you stay mad at Phyllis?
Yeah.
Because she has that soft, calm demeanor where she shows you that she's interested in you and making sure you get what you need out of this. And she's just going to keep saying the right things in the right tone of voice until you give in, because you can tell that she's not going to give up until you do give in. So you go ahead and give in because you just finally need to move on, because Phyllis has endless patience.
Absolutely. Other thoughts?
Thank you, Kelsey, for that. When I was done, I think what was told to me after just thinking, it was for me to make sure that Samantha was satisfied, not what I needed, but what she needed. And thank you for seeing that, because that's exactly where I was going. What can I do for you versus what you can do for me?
Ninja.
I specifically liked Phyllis's engagement. She didn't give up on Samantha at all. She was fighting from the beginning until the end, and she was there for Samantha. So she was asking questions, trying to see what can she do for Samantha from her perspective, and she was able to turn the table around. And at the end, Samantha came and said, "Yes, I'm willing to take the training session myself." So that she opened her heart, said, that's what I wanted the people to listen. And it seemed like at some point that people are not listening to Samantha, and Phyllis was able to buy the open-end questions to find out those parts.
Absolutely. We talked about doing a gap analysis, and Phyllis took it a little bit further and did a root cause analysis. What is oh, that's another session, but we'll give you a little bit of it now. She just assessed what was it that was causing some of that. I don't want to say crabbiness, but that was the name of the role, so we'll go with it. And she listened. She listened to Samantha say, I've been to several of these and no one ever listens to me. Okay, you know what? There is nothing in the handbook that says we can't partner up. Samantha, partner with me. Let's help lead this. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to see what you have to offer. Maybe it's something I can learn from. And she partnered up with her. It wasn't one of those, I'm going to shut you down and let's move on with the session. So I love that.
I want to make sure we hit on a couple of points from the chat because they're revolutionary in my opinion.
Okay, let's go.
So one person says that I'm going to make it an opening question. I'm going to address this problem before it even starts. Who's here because they have to be here?
Knock it out.
Okay. I love that. And then there's another perspective where you're still addressing it from the very beginning, but from a different angle. I had a high school teacher who would announce at the beginning of the year that those who didn't want to learn to participate should sit quietly and not disturb those that wanted to be there. All right. I like a combination of those approaches. Address it by who has to be here, another officer TLI training, because I feel like people are going to laugh with me if I say it that way. And I might have mentioned earlier today when I couldn't speak, I put in the chat how I loved humor, right? So I'm going to address the elephant in the room, but I'm going to do it in a way that makes everybody laugh. And then I might say, all right, we have a combination of people that are here to learn and ready and here for it. And we have some people who are just here because they have to be. So how about those that aren't as engaged? Listen in, but don't disrupt others' learning. Something along those lines. And then we had another suggestion. I too had an aha moment at this. I don't usually invite the cranky people to be a trainer, but that's a good idea to really shut them down, as well as opening their eyes to the need for help in leading these types of trainings. And in the case that Samantha expressed, I have a lot of ideas, but nobody ever listens to me. All right, come lead this, and you get to be the one that speaks all the ideas. Now, does that mean that person is necessarily going to be a great trainer? Maybe they need some coaching. Maybe we need to give them the room to grow as a trainer, right? But that's what TLI co-chairs are here for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love it. Now, I can't see the chat, so I don't know if anything else is coming up, but any other thoughts?
There was one more thing that I also use this tactic. I do ask at the beginning, who's been to training before? So a different version of who's here because they have to be here. It's who's here because they've been here before and they know they have to come to officer training. And then, great, I'm going to be looking for you to share your experiences and knowledge with those that are still new in the role.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
You get their buy-in from the very beginning because they already know they're going to have to speak and share experiences later.
Right. So we are doing that gap analysis. We're determining what their level of experience is, how much support and information I need to provide, but then also making it relevant to them. Oh, I've been here before. They're going to tell me the same thing, but maybe they've never been asked to contribute. Maybe it's never been presented in that way before. So have them help, have them share their expertise and knowledge. What did you learn at the last class that maybe we didn't share in this class? You can always get that engagement going. Awesome.
Anybody else have any other difficult behavior they've dealt with before and found a successful way around it?
It doesn't have to be with the ones that we've done. So we've talked about the talkative person. Does anyone have any tips or tricks on how you've had someone that tried to take over? We did silent. Maybe you have another example of silent, the crab, or the know-it-all. Has anyone had it? Oh, Donnie Young.
I nearly had a disaster last summer in a supplemental, where an attendee decided to basically repeat everything I said, but they did it like a table topics question, like here's the premise, here's my 3 examples, and then I'm going to summarize what I already just said 3 times. And it's like, but I just said that. You didn't have to like my explanation as a trainer wasn't good enough. And it was like, I'm never going to get through the session because she's doing it every single time. I mean, it was one of those things where I had to, I'm just going to call in I'm only going to call in 4 people on this round, and I'd have to leave her out of the mix. But then she'd just jump in anyway. And it was like, oh, can I mute her?
When we earlier when we were talking about the talkative and how you can minimize it, the thought came to mind, well, if I have admin rights, I can mute them, but that's probably not probably not what we're going to do. Yes. I mean, any thoughts or any ideas on how Donna could handle that in the future, or how you've handled that and it was successful? I haven't had that. But yes, absolutely valid question. So I think there's been some suggestions. I think a lot of what Emily said, when she was, okay, yes, Jim, that's great. I want to hear from some others. You don't have that. option to turn your camera off. So it is definitely a different environment. Any thoughts? Has anyone here with us today trained a TLI officer training session in person? Okay.
I
Any
have.
tips? Oh, good. Okay, yes. What tips do y'all have with, if you've encountered any challenging situations that others could benefit from?
I know Alex has had connectivity issues, so he may not be able to tell us how he's dealt with that in person. But I do see something in the chat from someone who also is not able to come off mute, but has been contributing a lot in the chat. So thank you for that. Provide ground rules before the meeting. And so since we're talking officer training specific, the in-person TLI session, you start with, hey, we have a lot of material to get through and I want to hear from everybody in the room. So there may come a time where I ask you to limit your responses to give others a chance to respond. You just set that expectation from the very beginning.
I love that. Any other thoughts? We have an in-person session happening on January the 13th.
I have another suggestion in the chat. Don't hide behind the lectern. Come out from behind the lectern and walk around the room. And as you're standing close to someone, point to them and ask them to contribute.
I like it. Yes, this doesn't have to be strictly for challenging situations. We did not have in-person sessions in the summer, so this may be some of our members' opportunity to train in person for the first time or to attend an in-person training for the first time. So absolutely, it doesn't have to just be any tips that you might have. Jeff, what's wrong?
No, thank you. Thank you, Brent. I was just thinking, I had similar scenarios when I was doing online and in person with the talkative person. Twice happened to me.
Okay.
So, and I think the strategy when you start speaking with a talkative person and try to convert the conversation from the talkative person, saying, let's reorganize, think about if we can give them more opportunity to other people to talk as well, politely redirecting. This strategy works both in person and in online. If you're polite, respectful, showing that, just calm down, not like I'm shut up, calm down. Let's transition the meeting from you to other person so other people can also get engaged was definitely worked very well.
So what I'm hearing is it's your delivery and how calm you are. We talked about Phyllis being very calm with Samantha. That delivery and the calmness and the tone is very important. Okay. Any other final thoughts on challenging behaviors or any additional tips for in-person trainings before we move on? All right. Well, we are at a point where we are very close to finishing up our steps for the training. Did we want to take another short break before we move on? I actually skipped over one. Y'all didn't see it, but the way that we're moving, I want to open up that opportunity if it would be beneficial for everyone to take a 5 to 10 minute break. No? I saw Jesse come off mute.
I'd say let's take 5 minutes. That way it's just a real quick break, bio or whatever people need. So we'll see you. I would say let's start back at 11:10. So 5 minutes.
There we go.
Keep on track with our schedule for today. And I believe that it's my turn, Brandi.
It is your turn.
Okay. I'm going to take us to step 5, the evaluation. And this one is a little bit different for officer trainings than it would be for anything else because the district provides you an evaluation. We're going to give you a link as a facilitator, and all you have to do is make sure to provide that link to your participants. However, as the facilitator, we've talked several times about how you're representing D25. the district. And so you want to set the tone for the responses that you're going to get to that evaluation before you even give the link to your participants. You want to sincerely ask them for their feedback. Communicate to them that the feedback is important to you. You want it. It's how you get better. This is what we do in Toastmasters. We speak, we get feedback. We speak, we get feedback. So equate the officer facilitator session evaluation form to the same process that we do in every other thing that we do in Toastmasters, because we need that feedback to get better, right? If you just provide the link and don't say anything else about evaluation, it's highly likely people aren't even going to complete it. How do you get better if you don't get feedback? So setting the tone and telling the people that you want the feedback, that it's okay to be honest in your feedback, that that's how you get better, what you're going to use that feedback for, that's how we get effective feedback. Now you'll get the feedback that you receive from people completing those forms from the district at a later time. We are going to be trying to provide the summary of the feedback evaluation that we get in a timely manner. So hopefully it's not going to be, months after TLI completes. We want you to receive that timely feedback, because say you're going to volunteer to teach 2 officer sessions. We want you to have that feedback in between so that you can use it to make your second one better than your first one. Moving right along, we do want to go through some specific resources. The first one is the D25 website. And I want to make sure to point out the specific steps in this page here. So you're going to go to D25Toastmasters.org and you're going to look for number 2 on your screen right now, the resources button at the top. And within that page, you're going to look for TLI training. That's step number 3 on your screen. Next slide, please.
1 second, I wanted to just interject one thing, because I know we have members on the session today that are not from D25. You can access this as well. So as she's going through the steps, take note, because you can use these same resources. Okay, next slide. Maybe. Here we go.
I love a suggestion from the chat. When you're asking for feedback, sorry, I'm backtracking because this suggestion is great for me. When you're asking for feedback, you can interject jokes like, I will be providing you a link to an evaluation form. And if you're providing positive feedback, remember, my name is Kelsey Dean. If your feedback isn't positive, my name is Jessie Ford. No, maybe not. But it's funny if you phrase it like that, right? And it's going to encourage people to lighten up, and that's how they're going to know you mean it when you say you want real feedback. It wasn't nice to you, Jessie, so I wouldn't pick you every time, but it's funny.
Okay. I understand. You're just trying to draw me out and get me to participate. Fine.
All right, back to our resources page. We made it all the way to the TLI training resources page within the D25 website. And now you think you're on the resources page, and so you think you're done and you're in the right place, except you have one more click, view the resources, and that takes us to the next slide. And now you see all of the resources you need to facilitate an officer session. There's the slideshow, there's a PDF, there's a video you can watch, and there's a manual that you can use as a facilitator guide. Does that mean you use all of those things and read every word on the slide and every word in the facilitator guide to everybody as you go along in every one of your officer facilitator sessions? And I'm seeing Brandi's head going north and south.
Yes. No?
I'm hoping what you got out of today is that you don't have to do that. You don't have to read word for word everything that TI provides you. Those materials are guides to help you make sure you hit all of the right points. You don't have to say it like they say it. You don't have to hit all of the points in the order that they hit all the points. You just use it as a guide to make sure that you're covering everything. But then you use all of the variety of techniques that we taught you today to make it fun, engaging, interesting, and keep people coming back to officer training.
Yes.
The next page that I'm going to talk about in terms of resources is the D25 website for club officer resources. And that is the same pathway that we just followed up to step 2. And then step 3 is club resources on the left side of your screen. And then step 4 is club officer resources. Next slide, please. In addition to the 2 places, TLI resources and club officer resources on the D25 website, there are other resources. Any tools that you use in the performance of that officer role can be used in your officer training session. Share the wealth and knowledge. Don't make people start from scratch. If you have a document, like I have a spreadsheet that I use for VPE, share that document. I've even made a version of that document designed specifically to hand out to other people. So I show them the one that I have used that's filled in with all the role assignments, and then I give them a template that's blank that has all of this conditional formatting in it so that they don't have to start from scratch and build their own spreadsheet. And then there are a variety of other networking opportunities, and D25 is adding more every year. You know about Facebook? There's some specific groups within Facebook now, in addition to the D25 bulletin board page. And now there's, Sally, are you still with us? We have a YouTube channel. She's not still with us. Anybody else know? A
Yes,
YouTube
we have
channel?
YouTube, we have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikTok.
That is a lot of resources. And like I said, we're still adding resources as we go along. And if you are good at developing resources, D25 always needs your help. So get in touch with some of our leaders. Next slide, please.
One thing I wanted to add on this one is the very first bullet here is for you to have the material ready for your session. The other ones are things that you're going to want to share depending on your audience. So let them know where they can find the club officer resources after the training, and let them know of any tools that you have. I've even been to some sessions where secretaries share really professional looking versions of their agenda that have been used in particularly my club. Our secretary went to a session and came back, and now our agenda looks different, but it looks amazing. And then, of course, the networking groups. Make sure that your audience knows of these resources after the session. Now
we're ready to wrap up. We told you we were almost done for today. There's one last exercise we're going to do as a group, and that is review. We talked about the 5 steps. They were a gap analysis to determine the training objectives for each particular audience that you are facilitating. Adjust your content and build a lesson plan based on the adult learning theories of people, adults specifically, like to participate in the learning. Choose the right methods, manage any difficult behavior that arises, and get feedback. What is one thing that you have learned today that you plan to apply to your officer facilitator session? Not everybody at once.
While someone's gathering their thoughts, I just want to make sure I understand. We provided that list at the beginning. We told them what we were going to tell them. And then we told them. And then you just told them again. Is that right? You told them what you told them?
I'm hearing the 3-rule method.
That's the 3-rule method. Okay. Awesome. And I can do that in my officer training session. I can say, today at the BPM session, this is what we're going to learn. Here's the stuff and things. This is what we learned today. Okay. Yes.
Modeling the way in progress.
All right. Yeah. What is one thing you learned that you plan to apply to your officer facilitator session? Hey, Kelsey, we might have to implement the silent. Oh, there we go. Donna Young.
I think the difficult audience, but I might not say it as a difficult audience. I might say, looking for the people who are silent, looking for the talkative people. I think I've got to have a set phrase because they all come up. And there are people who just go off on a sidetrack, and it's like, we do have a time constraint, but I like your idea, but I'm going to ask you to keep it shorter because we do have a time constraint. Just acknowledge it, just up front,
Yes, I also don't necessarily like the word difficult, because I think I tend to believe I always have positive intent, but I don't know that these people that we've discussed today are doing it out of spite, or it's just maybe they just don't realize that that's what they're doing. That's just kind of their personality. So it may be challenging. I don't know. But yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts?
I see something in the chat that someone learned that they can use more humor.
Yes, please.
That makes me happy.
It is. It's okay to use humor, even if you're just using yourself as the spot of the humor.
Someone learned a particular phrase that they're going to use in their trainings. I love this participation, but I want to hear from new voices. Who hasn't had a chance to speak today yet?
Love it. You know, another thing too, we're talking about officer facilitator sessions. This is a group called Toastmasters, right? I think we normally like to talk. So that's another way you can incorporate a little bit of humor as well. I want to hear from well, this is Toastmasters. We normally talk. Do we really have silent people in Toastmasters? Just kind of incorporate a little bit of humor. Any other thoughts?
There's another one in the chat that I want to make sure we all hear because it's very important. Based on what was presented today, I know that I can forget the guidelines and make it my own. I love that thought. Does that mean that you abandon the content altogether? Absolutely not. That means that you can deliver the content in your own way. And that is exactly what makes you a great trainer.
It is. You know the material better. You know how to do this role. You are training it. Don't feel that you have to stick to something that someone else created. Use the points as a guide, but yes, be comfortable in the information you're sharing.
I believe we have time for one more what I learned today. Anyone want to come off mute and shout something out for us? Anne.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh,
do you have anything to share about what you learned today?
Oh, well, as I put in the chat, I think that I tend to get very serious and, oh, this is so important. And I need to lighten up, that I do have to use humor and just relax and go with it because it's not rocket science.
And oftentimes it's just acknowledging that you can use humor that gives you the permission to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You subconsciously limit yourself because you think you have to get through all of this content. You're a better trainer when you are more yourself.
You are. You're comfortable. You don't have that pressure of, oh no, I forgot something. Use the information you know, and that actually reflects on the audience as well. Because if the audience sees this tense person who's training, they might be in a different mindset. But if they see that, oh, this is a safe space and we can talk, I might be more willing to speak. I might not be a silent participant. I might be more willing to have that conversation because it feels safe. I love it.
All right, team, thank you so much for your contributions today. Your attendance and participation is what made today great. D25 appreciates you, and we hope that you found this valuable. Brandi, any final thoughts?
I love all of the interaction. So you saw how we were able to pull from the audience, whether it be in the chat or just in the audience in general, use those techniques. We were able to role play by being in a training environment. We showed you how to do it. And so if you're able to take any of these tips with you, whether you're training virtually or in person, then you should have a very successful training session. And we're here until the end of the year. So if you have a training session coming up and you use some of these techniques, let us know. Let us know how it went. My only final thought is, Kelsey, this is about officer training, right?
Yes,
how
ma'am,
would
it was.
someone go about signing up to train at a TLI?
I put that in the chat in the very beginning of the session when I couldn't speak. So let me say it out loud now that I can speak. I am the one that is signing up facilitators for Winter TLI sessions. I am dropping my email address in the chat right now. It is kdean1610@aol.com. Go ahead and laugh. Yes, I use AOL still. And when you send me an email and tell me which officer facilitator session you want to teach, I will fill your name in that slot and you'll receive more information from us at a later date. I am still looking for an SAH facilitator for Monday, December 11th. That is 2 days from now. It only requires an hour of your time. Please email me today if you can take that specific session. And then again, please email me today if you want to facilitate any session. We'll find you a time.
Yes, and I am helping with the supplemental sessions. So if you are in a position where you want to train a supplemental session, for example, Samantha Watt is our contest coordinator this year. She has already signed up, but if there's anything that you would want to sign up to lead as a session, I know Donnie Young's been a facilitator for us before, let me know and I will drop my email in the chat so that you can contact me. We also have, do we have the TLI email address readily available that we can include as well?
I believe our leader, PQD Jesse Ford, might have that available to drop in the chat. And I also want to invite our leaders to give us any final comments. District Director Emily or PQD Jesse, any other comments from you guys?
I'll drop that email in the chat in a minute, but I want to say a special thank you to you, Brandi, and you, Kelsey. This was fantastic, and you guys did an absolutely wonderful job. I appreciate you both for taking the time and making TLI just that much better. So kudos to both of you, and thank you again.
Our pleasure.
I apologize. I went to unmute myself and then minimized everything. I was like, where did it all go? Maybe we could have a session on how to use Zoom. I enjoyed this. I have been to speaker to trainer before, but it has been a couple of years. And so it's always good to have a refresher. And I feel like today you guys did an excellent job of really demonstrating and actively role-playing all of the techniques that you were talking about. And the last time that I heard it, it was more of that lecture format that we were talking about. And this can be a very, very long lecture. So I really appreciated that you actually implementing in this training what you were training about.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sounds like we achieved our goals for today. Everybody go forth and have a productive rest of your Saturday. Thank you for attending.
And forget about evaluations. Round of applause, everybody off mute. Come on, let's clap. Let's say we really enjoyed this. Come on, let's go.